Let's look a little more in depth at the ribbon. First, there are tabs across the top. Contained in each of these tabs, you'll find groups. These groups have a name, and they're shown here at the bottom of the group. And then inside of each group, you'll have individual buttons. So again, tabs, groups, and buttons. The tabs are laid out in the order you're most likely going to create your score in. So you'll start with items here, adding and removing instruments, adding bars, deleting bars. Then you'll go into note input mode, add various notes into your score. You'll add some notation, key changes, clefs, as well as lines, crescendos, decrescendos, dynamics, that kind of thing. So you'll move from left to right across the tabs as you're working on a piece of music inside of Sibelius. Also, under the tabs and in each of the groups, occasionally you'll see these little markers right here. These are called dialog launcher buttons, and they contain additional information that you may need to access. So for example, if we go to text and then click here on styles, it gives you a little more detailed information than you'll find here by clicking on the styles button and choosing various text styles. The ribbon can also change in appearance as you start shrinking Sibelius. So if we move it from left to right, what you'll start seeing is that some of these groups start shrinking and become smaller. Now you can see the chord symbols is just one box. You click on that and it gives you all of the details. The File tab, you can see, is a little different. It's purple than the other available tabs in Sibelius. There's a reason for that. When you click on the File tab, it actually takes you outside of your score. You can see our score disappears, and now we are in the File tab section, which gives you a bunch of different options, including the ability to save as, open or close your particular Sibelius file, as well as export or print your document. You can get out of this File tab section also by hitting Escape. So if I hit Escape on my QWERTY keys, it takes me out of the File tab, which is also called the Backstage in Sibelius, and back into my score. Let's look at the Home tab real briefly. A few things we want to cover on the Home tab. One of the important ones is transposing score. So you can see it has a shortcut, and that is Shift-Command-T or Shift-Control-T on a PC. And what that does is transpose our score either to concert pitch or to transposed score. So now if you look down here as well, you can see we are in concert pitch, and the notes in various instruments have changed that don't use concert pitch. So for example, the horns. So if we go up to transposing score and click on that, or use the shortcut Shift-Command-T, you'll notice here that the pitches of the horns change, and now down here it says we're in transposing score. So be aware of transposing score while you're working. The Note Input tab contains basically all the information you need as you're inputting notes into your score. Notations tab allows you to add various notations to your score. Text is very obvious as well, anything that contains text, so expression text, techniques, tempos, metronome marks, etc. All those kind of texts will be found under the Text tab. Let's look a little bit at the Playback tab and talk about its functionality. Okay, let's look briefly at Sibelius Playback Engine, playback configurations, and devices, as well as Sibelius 7 sounds. So when you're using Sibelius, you should be using the Sibelius 7 sounds. This requires a separate installation. So if you have a copy of the application at home, you're also going to have to install Sibelius sounds separately. You can select which sounds Sibelius is using by clicking over here. You can see there's chamber, jazz, light, and just the standard Sibelius 7 sounds. You can also dig a little deeper into the playback engine by clicking on this dialog launcher button. That's going to bring you to the playback devices page. You can see here we're using the Sibelius player and we're playing back Sibelius sounds. If you double click on that, you can choose other sounds as well. And then if we come down here, we can actually look at our individual audio engine options. So this is where we decide where Sibelius is going to output its audio data. You can see right now I'm using my Lynx AES16E card. Most likely in the lab, you're going to have this selected to use the built-in output. So if you're not hearing any sound inside of Sibelius, this is where you're going to look, under the audio engine options, which is here underneath the dialog launcher button. Here on the Playback Devices tab, you can have one configuration at a time which Sibelius uses. That configuration can also consist of multiple devices. So right now I'm just using the Sibelius player and I'm choosing which sounds I want to use. So one configuration can contain multiple devices and you can only have one configuration playing back sounds at a time. You can choose your playback configuration here, or you can also change your playback configuration over here as I mentioned before. In your score itself, you can see where the playback cursor is located. It's this green vertical line that goes from the top to the bottom of your score. You can start playback by hitting the space bar. You can also stop playback by hitting the space bar as well. You can move your cursor fast forward or rewind by using the brackets on the QWERTY keys. So left bracket moves you back to the left, right bracket moves you further into your score. There are two sets of playback controls. One is here in the ribbon under the Play tab and the Transport group, and these do the same things as the space bar, stop and start. You can fast forward and rewind, same as the forward or right and left bracket, and then you can move yourself to the beginning or to the end of your score here as well. You can access the transport under the transport panel, and that's under View, and over here, Panels and Transport. And the shortcut is Option Command Y, and that opens the transport window. Here you have a lot of the same controls, as well as the slider which allows you to move fast forward and find various places inside of your score. In Sibelius, the Command key does more. So Command on a Mac PC would be Control. So Command and left bracket takes you to the beginning. Command and right bracket takes you to the end of your score. So between those few commands, forward bracket and backwards bracket, and then command and backwards bracket to move you to the very beginning of their score, you can navigate your score relatively easily with the playback cursor. The letter P on the QWERTY keys can also be used for playback. So it has three functions. If nothing is selected in your score, like right now, and we just hit P, it will play back from the beginning of your score. Even if we move our cursor to the right like this and then hit P, it will still play back from the beginning of the score. Now if we select a stave like this and hit P, it will solo that specific stave. Okay, I'm hitting escape to get out. And lastly, if we select a note and hit P, it will start at that location. So P with nothing selected will start you at the beginning of your score. P with a staff selected will solo that specific staff. And P with a note selected will start at that location. Last thing I wanted to cover in this video is the replay functionality. So there isn't a loop functionality per se in Sibelius, but you can use what's called replay. You can create that by selecting where you want Sibelius to play, and we'll go ahead and hit P to start there. And then hitting the spacebar when you want to stop. And then what you have to do is use the replay command, which is Option spacebar, to start again at that location. Hit spacebar, hit Option spacebar, and it will continue to start where it originally started. Spacebar to stop, Option spacebar to start again at that location. So that's the replay functionality.